Bullies call her too weak until she takes down 3 at once. Maya Patel stood at the entrance of Westfield High School, clutching her worn backpack straps as students rushed past her like she was invisible. At 17, she was barely 5 feet tall with a slight frame that made her look more like a middle schooler than a senior. Her dark hair hung in loose waves around her face, partially hiding the nervous expression she wore like armor. Maya had been at Westfield for 3 years now, but she still felt like an outsider looking in. The hallways buzzed with Monday morning energy as Maya navigated through the crowd, keeping her head down and her steps quick. She had perfected the art of invisibility, slipping between groups of chattering students without drawing attention to herself. Maya preferred it this way, quiet, unnoticed, safe. But safety was a luxury she wouldn't have for long. "Well, look what we have here," came a familiar voice that made Maya's stomach drop. Jessica Kane emerged from the crowd like a predator who had spotted wounded prey. At 18, Jessica was everything Maya wasn't. Tall, confident, with perfectly styled blonde hair and a smile that could cut glass. She was flanked by her usual companions, Madison Torres, a volleyball player with arms like tree trunks, and Ashley Williams, whose voice could be heard across 3 classrooms when she wanted attention. Maya tried to sidestep the group, but Jessica moved to block her path. The other students seemed to sense the tension and gave them a wide berth, not wanting to get involved but curious enough to watch from a distance. "Going somewhere, Maya?" Jessica's voice dripped with false sweetness. "You look like you're in a hurry." "I just need to get to class," Maya said quietly, her eyes fixed on the floor. Madison let out a laugh that sounded more like a bark. "She just needs to get to class," she mimicked in a high-pitched voice. "What's the rush, small fry? Afraid you'll be late for remedial math?" Maya felt her cheeks burn. She wasn't in remedial math. In fact, she was in advanced calculus, but correcting them would only make things worse. She had learned that lesson the hard way during her sophomore year. "Leave me alone, please," Maya whispered, trying once again to move around them. Ashley stepped sideways, blocking her escape route. "Did you guys hear that?" she said, "please." "How polite." She turned to Jessica with exaggerated amazement. "I think she's actually asking us nicely." Jessica crossed her arms and looked Maya up and down with undisguised contempt. "You know what your problem is, Maya. You're too weak. You let everyone walk all over you and then you wonder why nobody respects you." The words hit harder than any physical blow could have. Maya's hands trembled slightly as she gripped her backpack straps tighter. "They don't know anything about me," she thought desperately. "If they only knew that, but they couldn't know. Nobody at school could ever know." "I'm not weak," Maya said, her voice barely audible. "What was that?" Madison cupped her ear dramatically. "Did the mouse just squeak?" The circle of onlookers grew larger, and Maya could feel dozens of eyes on her. Some students pulled out their phones, hoping to capture whatever was about to happen. Others just watched with the detached interest of people observing a nature documentary. Mrs. Henderson, the chemistry teacher, walked past the group without so much as a glance. She was too busy rifling through papers in her folder to notice what was happening right in front of her. Maya had seen this pattern before. Teachers who chose not to see, students who chose not to intervene, a whole school ecosystem built on willful blindness. "You know what I think?" Jessica continued, her voice getting louder for the benefit of their audience. "I think you need to learn what real weakness looks like." Before Maya could react, Jessica's hand shot out and shoved her backward. Maya stumbled, her backpack sliding off one shoulder, and several books tumbled to the floor. The sound of textbooks hitting linoleum echoed through the hallway, followed by scattered laughter from the crowd. Maya dropped to her knees to gather her scattered belongings, her face burning with embarrassment. As she reached for her calculus book, Ashley's foot came down on it, not hard enough to damage it, but enough to keep Maya from picking it up. "Oops," Ashley said with mock concern. "My bad." Maya looked up at her, and for just a moment, something flickered in her dark eyes. Something that made Ashley take an involuntary step backward. But the moment passed quickly, and Maya's expression returned to its usual resigned calm. "Not here," Maya told herself, the same mantra she had repeated countless times over the past 3 years. "Not in front of everyone, not unless I have no choice." She gently moved Ashley's foot aside and retrieved her book, standing up slowly with her materials clutched against her chest. "This isn't over," Jessica said, as Maya finally managed to step around them. "We'll see you at lunch, Maya. Don't forget to bring your appetite. For humble pie." The crowd began to disperse as the warning bell rang, but Maya could still feel their eyes on her as she walked toward her first period classroom. She heard whispers and giggles following in her wake, and she knew that by the end of the day, the entire school would have heard about her latest humiliation. Just get through today, Maya told herself as she slipped into her AP Literature classroom, just like every other day. But even as she took her seat and opened her notebook, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that something was different this time. The look in Jessica's eyes had been hungrier than usual, more predatory, and the crowd had been larger, more engaged. They're getting bolder, Maya realized with growing dread, and I don't know how much longer I can keep walking away. The morning classes passed in a blur of equations and essays, but Maya's mind kept drifting back to the confrontation in the hallway. During second period chemistry, she found herself staring at Mrs. Henderson and wondering if the teacher had actually seen what happened or if she had just chosen to ignore it. During third period history, she watched her classmates and tried to figure out which ones had been recording with their phones. By the time lunch period arrived, Maya's stomach was twisted in knots. She considered skipping lunch entirely and hiding in the library, but she knew that would only delay the inevitable. Jessica and her friends would find her eventually. They always did. The cafeteria was a sprawling space filled with round tables and the constant din of teenage conversation. Maya grabbed a turkey sandwich and a bottle of water, paying quickly before scanning the room for a safe place to sit. She spotted an empty table near the windows and made her way over, hoping to eat in peace. She should have known better. Maya had barely taken her first bite when Jessica's shadow fell across her table. This time, the three girls weren't alone. They had brought backup in the form of Tyler Brooks, a linebacker from the football team who looked like he could bench press a small car. Well, Jessica said, sliding into the seat across from Maya without invitation. Look who decided to show up for lunch after all. Madison and Ashley took the seats on either side of Maya, effectively trapping her, while Tyler remained standing behind Jessica like a muscle-bound sentinel. I heard you had something to say about me this morning, Jessica continued, even though Maya had barely spoken a word during their earlier encounter. I didn't say anything about you, Maya replied quietly, setting down her sandwich. That's not what I heard, Ashley chimed in. I heard you were telling people that Jessica was afraid of you. Maya's eyes widened. I never said that. I would never... Are you calling Ashley a liar? Madison demanded, leaning closer. The cafeteria noise seemed to fade into the background as other students began to notice the confrontation. Maya could see heads turning, phones coming out, conversations stopping as people oriented themselves toward the drama unfolding at her table. I'm not calling anyone anything, Maya said, her voice strained. I just want to eat my lunch in peace. Jessica laughed, but there was no humor in it. Peace? You think you deserve peace after the disrespect you showed me this morning? I didn't disrespect. Maya's words were cut off as Jessica reached across the table and knocked over Maya's water bottle. The liquid spread across the table and dripped onto Maya's lap, soaking through her jeans. Oops, Jessica said, echoing Ashley's earlier fake apology. How clumsy of me. Maya stood up quickly, trying to avoid the worst of the spill, but Madison grabbed her wrist and pulled her back down into her seat. Where do you think you're going? Madison asked. We're not done talking yet. Maya tried to pull her arm free, but Madison's grip was like iron. Around them, the cafeteria had gone almost completely quiet. Even the lunch staff had stopped serving to watch what was happening. Let go of me, Maya said, and this time there was something in her voice that made Tyler shift uncomfortably. But Madison either didn't hear the warning or chose to ignore. Instead, she tightened her grip and leaned in closer. Make me, she challenged. For a moment, Maya was completely still. Then, very slowly, she looked up and met Madison's eyes directly for the first time. You don't want to do that, Maya said quietly. There was something in her tone, something cold and certain, that made Madison's confident smirk falter slightly, but Jessica wasn't about to let her lieutenant back down. Oh, this is rich, Jessica said loudly, playing to their audience. The little mouse is trying to roar. What are you going to do, Maya? Tell the teacher? Call your mommy? The mention of Maya's mother hit like a physical blow. Her mom worked double shifts at the hospital and had enough to worry about without dealing with her daughter's problems at school. Maya had never told her about the bullying, and she never would. My mother has nothing to do with this, Maya said, her voice still quiet but somehow carrying more weight than before. Doesn't she, though? Jessica leaned back in her chair, sensing weakness. I bet she's real proud of her pathetic little daughter. I bet she tells all her friends about how brave and strong you are. Something snapped inside Maya's chest, like a wire that had been stretched too far. She felt a familiar warmth spreading through her limbs, a sense of power that she had spent 3 years suppressing. Not here, she told herself desperately, not like this. But Jessica wasn't finished. "You know what I think?" Jessica said, standing up and walking around the table to where Maya sat, trapped between Madison and Ashley. "I think you need to learn some respect, and I think the whole school needs to see what happens to people who think they can disrespect me." Before Maya could react, Jessica grabbed the turkey sandwich from Maya's tray and held it above her head. "Open wide," Jessica said with a cruel smile. The cafeteria was dead silent now. Everyone was watching, waiting to see what would happen. Next, some students had their phone cameras rolling, ready to capture Maya's humiliation for posterity. Maya looked up at Jessica, and for a moment, everyone in the room could see something shift in her expression. The resigned acceptance was gone, replaced by something harder and infinitely more dangerous. "Put it down," Maya said, her voice carrying across the silent cafeteria with startling clarity. Jessica's smile widened. Or what? That was when Maya made her decision. She had been attending Westfield High for 3 years, and for 3 years she had endured the constant harassment, the daily humiliations, the casual cruelty of teenagers who saw her as an easy target. She had walked away from countless confrontations, ignored hundreds of insults, and absorbed abuse that would have broken someone without her particular background. But everyone has a breaking point, even someone who had been trained from childhood to control their impulses. Maya had started training in Krav Maga when she was 8 years old, not long after her family had moved to the United States from Mumbai. Her father, who worked in private security, had insisted that both Maya and her older brother learn to defend themselves. By the time she was 12, Maya could disable an adult attacker in seconds. By 15, she was teaching classes at her father's security firm on weekends. But with great power comes great responsibility, and Maya's parents had drilled into her the importance of restraint. Violence was a last resort, to be used only when all other options had been exhausted. For 3 years at Westfield, Maya had convinced herself that she always had other options. She could walk away, she could ignore them, she could endure. Looking up at Jessica's sneering face, with Madison's hand still gripping her wrist and Ashley blocking her escape route, Maya realized that she had finally run out of options. "Last warning," Maya said, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her veins. "Put down the sandwich and walk away." Jessica's laugh was sharp and mocking. "You're going to warn me? You're going to threaten me?" She looked around at their audience, playing up her disbelief. "Did everyone hear that? Little Maya Patel just threatened me." The sandwich came down toward Maya's face, but it never made contact. Maya's free hand shot up and caught Jessica's wrist in a grip that made the taller girl gasp in surprise and pain. At the same time, Maya twisted her body and used a pressure point technique to force Madison to release her other arm. Jessica tried to pull away, but Maya's grip was unbreakable. The sandwich fell to the table as Jessica's eyes widened in shock and the first hint of real fear. "I said, put it down," Maya said, rising slowly from her chair. The entire cafeteria seemed to hold its breath. This was not the Maya Patel they knew, the quiet, submissive girl who took abuse without fighting back. This person was someone else entirely, someone who moved with fluid confidence and spoke with quiet authority. "Let go of me," Jessica demanded, but her voice had lost its earlier bravado. "Gladly," Maya said, releasing Jessica's wrist. "Now back away." But Tyler, who had been watching the exchange with growing confusion, decided that this had gone far enough. He stepped forward and put his hand on Maya's shoulder, intending to push her back into her seat. He never saw Maya's counterattack coming. Maya spun under Tyler's arm, using his own momentum against him, and applied a joint lock that sent the 200-pound football player to his knees in seconds. Tyler's face contorted in pain as Maya maintained just enough pressure to keep him immobilized without causing permanent damage. The cafeteria erupted in gasps and shouts. Students jumped to their feet, some backing away, in shock, others pressing closer to get a better view. Cell phones appeared from every direction, recording the impossible scene of tiny Maya Patel holding the school's star linebacker, helpless on the floor. "Holy shit," someone whispered, and the profanity seemed to break the spell that had held. Everyone frozen. Madison recovered from her surprise first and lunged at Maya from behind, probably thinking she could overwhelm the smaller girl with brute force. It was a mistake that cost her dearly. Maya heard Madison coming and released Tyler just long enough to sidestep the attack. Madison's momentum carried her forward, and Maya helped her along with a perfectly executed hip throw that sent the volleyball player crashing into an empty table. Ashley, seeing her two friends neutralized in a matter of seconds, made the smart choice and backed away with her hands raised. "I'm out," Ashley said quickly. "I'm not part of this." But Jessica, her face flushed with rage and embarrassment, wasn't ready to retreat. She grabbed an empty water bottle from a nearby table and swung it at Maya's head. Maya ducked the wild swing and came up inside Jessica's guard, landing a controlled strike to her solar plexus that dropped Jessica to her knees, gasping for breath. The whole entire confrontation had lasted less than 30 seconds. Maya stood in the center of the chaos, breathing heavily but still in complete control. Tyler was on his hands and knees, clutching his shoulder and staring at Maya with something approaching. Madison was groaning as she tried to untangle herself from the overturned table. Jessica was doubled over, struggling to catch her breath. The cafeteria was in complete uproar. Students were shouting, teachers were running toward the scene, and the sound of approaching footsteps echoed from the hallway as word of the fight spread throughout the school. Maya looked around at the faces surrounding her, some shocked, some impressed, some frightened. She saw her classmates looking at her as if they were seeing her for the first time, which in many ways they were. "Anyone else?" Maya asked quietly, her voice carrying easily through the noise. No one moved, no one spoke. Even Tyler, who outweighed Maya by at least 80 pounds, remained on his knees and avoided eye contact. Principal Martinez burst through the crowd, flanked by 2 security guards and several teachers. He took in the scene with experienced eyes, the overturned table, the 3 students on the ground, and Maya standing calmly in the center of it all. "Miss Patel," he said, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had dealt with countless teenage conflicts. "My office, now." Maya nodded and gathered her backpack, which had somehow stayed on her shoulder throughout the entire confrontation. As she walked toward Principal Martinez, the crowd parted before her like water, but as she reached the edge of the circle, Maya turned back to face Jessica, who was finally managing to stand upright with Ashley's help. "You said I was too weak," Maya said, her voice carrying across the now silent cafeteria. "You were wrong about that. You were wrong about a lot of things." Jessica opened her mouth as if to respond, but no words came out. The confident bully who had terrorized Maya for 3 years had been replaced by someone who looked small and uncertain. "But you were right about one thing," Maya continued. "I was letting people walk all over me. That stops now." Maya turned and walked toward the exit, her head held high for the first time in 3 years. Behind her, she could hear the whispered conversations starting up, the rapid-fire exchange of text messages, the beginning of a story that would spread through Westfield High like wildfire. The suspension was inevitable, of course. Principal Martinez was a fair man, but he couldn't ignore what had happened in front of half the school. Maya spent the rest of the week at home, using the time to catch up on homework and help her mother with household chores. But when she returned to school the following Monday, everything had changed. Students who had never spoken to her before nodded respectfully as she passed in the hallways. Underclassmen who had witnessed the cafeteria incident looked at her with something approaching hero worship. Even some of the teachers seemed to regard her differently, as if they were finally seeing the person who had been hiding in plain sight for 3 years. Jessica and her friends were noticeably absent from Maya's daily routine. They ate lunch at a different time, took different routes between classes, and seemed to have developed a sudden interest in activities that kept them far away from Maya's path. The change wasn't just in how others treated Maya, it was in how she carried herself. The hunched shoulders and downcast eyes were gone, replaced by confident posture and direct eye contact. She spoke up in class discussions, joined the debate team, and even tried out for the school's self-defense club. 3 weeks after the incident, Maya was walking to her locker after school when she heard familiar footsteps behind her. She turned to find Jessica approaching alone, looking nothing like the confident predator who had made Maya's life miserable for so long. "Maya," Jessica said quietly, stopping several feet away, as if afraid to get too close. "Can we talk?" Maya studied her former tormentor for a moment, taking in the nervous energy and defensive posture. "What do you want, Jessica?" "I wanted to," Jessica started, then stopped, seeming to struggle with the words. "I wanted to apologize for everything. I was wrong to treat you the way I did, and I'm sorry." Maya raised an eyebrow. "Are you apologizing because you're sorry, or because you're afraid of me now?" Jessica flinched at the direct question. "Both, I guess. I mean, I am sorry. I've had time to think about it, and I realize how terrible I was to you. But yeah, I'm also afraid of you now, we all are." "Good," Maya said simply. "You should be afraid. Not because I'm going to hurt you. I won't, unless you give me no choice, but because you finally understand that actions have consequences. Jessica nodded, looking down at her feet. I know I don't have any right to ask, but do you think you could forgive me, eventually? Maya was quiet for a long moment, considering the question. She thought about all the humiliations, all the times she had eaten lunch alone because Jessica and her friends had made the cafeteria unbearable, all the nights she had gone to bed feeling worthless and invisible. I don't know, Maya said finally, but I'm willing to find out. Just remember, forgiveness isn't the same as forgetting. And if you ever go back to your old ways with me or anyone else, we're going to have another conversation. And next time I might not be so gentle. Jessica nodded quickly. I understand, and Maya, thank you for not really hurting us that day. You could have, couldn't you? Really hurt us, I mean. Maya's smile was small but genuine. Jessica, you have no idea what I could have done. But that's not who I am. I'm not a bully, and I never will be. I just refuse to be a victim anymore. As Jessica walked away, Maya felt a sense of closure that had been missing from her life for years. She wasn't naive enough to think that all her problems were solved. There would always be new challenges, new conflicts, new people who mistook kindness for weakness, but she had learned something important about herself in that cafeteria confrontation. She had discovered that there was a difference between choosing not to fight and being unable to fight. For 3 years, she had chosen restraint, but everyone around her had mistaken that choice for helplessness. Now they knew better. More importantly, she knew better. Maya Patel was no longer the invisible girl who absorbed abuse in silence. She was someone who commanded respect, not through fear, but through the quiet confidence that came from knowing exactly who she was and what she was capable of. And as she walked through the halls of Westfield High, with her head held high, Maya realized that this was just the beginning. She had spent so much energy hiding from the world that she had forgotten what it felt like to truly live in it. She wouldn't make that mistake again.